So yeah, this movie picks up right where Far From Home left off, with Mysterio exposing Peter's identity as Spider-Man. And we literally see the fallout right of it. Some people think he's a hero, some are just shocked, and some are calling him a murderer or trying to blame him. A detail I noticed, there's this one woman saying, "Spider-Man hit me." And this other guy tried to grab him while he was swinging. And wow. Kind of a subtle commentary on how divided as a culture we are here in the United States. Gotta say that right there. Holy shit. And gosh dang. Also, freaking turns out, a detail I just noticed, Damage Control investigated Peter and Stark Industries, and basically all of Stark's leftover tech is raided and seized by Damage Control. So that's an interesting twist, especially since it was Tony Stark who founded Damage Control to fix all the damages from all the superheroics that go on an average day during the MCU. I mean, shoot, I bet they probably handled the wreckage of Dreykov's airbase in Black Widow. So yeah. Anyway, yeah. So Peter's being pursued, and let's just say Aunt May is helping him, and she's gonna have a big role later in the video. So I want to highlight her with a little bit of Happy Hogan. Though I gotta say, I feel like her and May, him and May kind of switched. Felt like Happy had a bigger role in Far From Home than May, but May did in this movie. And I also noticed too in Homecoming, Aunt May had way more screen time and only had her small one-scene cameo in Avengers Endgame. But nonetheless, she's made an impact, and I'll discuss why. I'm gonna say this right here, I may start tearing up at certain points during this video because I just came back from seeing it a second time, and certain things have dawned on me. And yeah, this movie's got quite emotional. I can see why John Watts called this movie Spider-Man Endgame. I guess I'll go ahead and address the elephant in the room in this video right now to get it over with, and then I'll discuss it later in the video. Yes, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are back. Both of them. And I feel like they're in it for just the right amount of screen time. Not too much, not too little, just right. I didn't want them to overshadow Spider-Man and make it Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield featuring Tom Holland. His name is in the title after all, and he has top billing. So, really glad with the way that was handled. And all I will say is they definitely... we'll get to that later. I guess the last of these things I want to highlight, it's, I believe, confirmed, maybe not officially, but pretty damn close. Charlie Cox, Daredevil, is in the MCU. So I think Marvel Netflix is officially canon. So yay. Now he's not Daredevil, but he is Matt Murdock, and Matt Murdock provides Spider-Man with his legal defense because he gets arrested by Damage Control and is questioned, but they don't have a case on him. And Daredevil basically, or not Daredevil, Matt Murdock, well, they're kind of interchangeable, but he was Matt Murdock, just goes after him, is like, yeah, you're good, Peter. But Happy, I guess, because he worked with Tony Stark, and the tech was what was used against Mysterio, has to defend himself, and it's his condo, Minium, that frickin' Aunt May and Peter live in, because they can't live in their own house because they're swarmed by the press. So yeah. And anyway, so I guess here's a few images from Charlie Cox as Daredevil, and a few images I want to highlight of Aunt May before I discuss her in the video more, played by Marissa Tomei and killing it as always. And I guess of Happy Hogan as well. And a few images of Tom Holland and Zendaya, because their relationship is definitely something that drives this movie, and it is very sweet, and you can tell Zendaya and Tom Holland, their chemistry isn't just on screen or off screen, it's on screen as well. So anyway, here are all those images. So yeah, the other thing too I like is this movie addresses that all these actors look a lot older than teenagers, and it would be kind of hard to convincingly say they're teenagers. But anyway, they're all looking into going to college and looking to go to MIT or a few backup schools. So that was a real nice way of seeing their friendship build, along with Michelle and Peter's relationship continue. But guess that leads to what Peter decides to do with Doctor Strange, which is in the trailer. So I guess to sum it up, he goes to Doctor Strange to get them to cast a spell to make everyone forget Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And I want to say this right now, I feel like this movie is the Spider-Man comic one more day, but done right. I have a friend who really hates that comic, and it might just be my least favorite comic ever. But yeah, it is stupid. It is a stupid-ass story that the editor of Marvel at the time, Joe Quesada, did to just... He said that that superheroes are boring when they're married, because he didn't want Peter Parker to be married to Mary Jane anymore. Just real stupid, backwards logic. And it's a problem with all comics in general. I mean, they did something similar to Betty Ross and Bruce Banner, and it seems like the only couple that stays together married is Reed Richards and Sue Storm. They're like the only one in all of comics, Marvel, DC, you name it. But yeah, seems like that's about it in terms of a couple staying married. So it is what it is. Boy, I'm glad relationships sure do last longer in the movies though than they do in comics. Along with death, I'm glad death actually stays. I will admit, I was kind of hoping Mysterio would come back, but it kind of works for the story of this movie that he's dead. So I'm going to address that right now. Mysterio does not come back. So I was kind of hoping he'd come back and say, I'm the mastermind behind this multiverse and the Sinister Six, but that ended up not being the case. But yeah, Doctor Strange and Peter cast the spell. Well, Strange does, but Peter doesn't allow it to be cast smoothly, which then allows past Spider-Man villains to appear, and some who I didn't really see why they came back, but I'm glad they did, and they were all used well. So just gonna name them off all here real quick. Doc Ock, we first see him on this bridge scene, played by the great Alfred Molina, killing it yet again, along with the Green Goblin, Norman Osborn, from the Maguire movies, along with Sandman from the Maguire trilogy, and then finishing off with two Garfield villains, that being Electro and Lizard. So yeah, I guess to highlight the bridge scene first, Peter fights Doc Ock. He's trying to go after the MIT Grand Chancellor, and he ends up saving her, which then gets them to reconsider admitting Michelle, Ned, and Peter. I mean, he wasn't going to do it, but then she was like, you're a hero. You know what? I'm going to tell them to reconsider for you too. But it leads to a real great scene with Doc Ock that I kind of like. It shows the adaptability of the Iron Spider armor. I mean, shoot, it's in all the posters. He is wearing the Iron Spider armor, so I don't think I need to show an image. I've already shown it in all my other videos, but it like formed onto his arms. Peter kind of connected to it with like a Bluetooth device, kind of like my microphone here, and literally like he immobilized him. It was so awesome, and Ock was all pissed and whatnot, because when he comes back, he's like, where's my machine? I want the power of the sun in the palm of my hand. But yeah, it was really great. And frickin' just many great callbacks there, and also we get to see the Green Goblin Norman Osborn back for a brief second in his classic, well, I don't know if I'm gonna call it classic because some fans didn't like it, the outfit that some called Power Ranger like. Kind of glad that he ditches it almost immediately, and there's the scene where he's doing the talk with the mask, and he's like, I've had it with you, and he's back to being Norman Osborn, and he breaks the mask. And then Strange teleports him back. And for the next, I want to say 20 minutes, maybe half an hour, is about Peter grabbing the multiverse visitors, because Strange realized that they came through him closing up the multiverse. They squeaked through the cracks, as Strange put it. And I'm going to say this right now. Doctor Strange isn't really the mentor type figure that some thought he was. He's not the next Nick Fury or Tony Stark. He's kind of just an ally there to help Spider-Man, and to be quite honest, he's only in this movie when he's needed, and there is a long period of time where he isn't even in the movie at all, so that criticism's kind of stupid. So yeah, if that criticism ever comes up, it's invalid. Much like a lot about Black Widow. And I'm going to say this right now, I think Spider-Man No Way Home is my favorite movie of this year for Marvel. I hate to say it, I love Black Widow a lot, but Black Widow is now number 2. It's Black Widow, Shang-Chi is probably 3rd, then Eternals, with this one being number 1. But, yeah, anyway, it then leads to Peter having to wear his costume inside out, which is that black costume. Turns out that's just his regular one, but worn inside out, which leads to him going after Electro. What I like too is, for a brief second, it looks like they're going to have him look the same from The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Some YouTubers may say this, but I call bullshit on it. I feel like he's a variant. This isn't the same Electro from The Amazing Spider-Man 2. It's a variant who I feel just has the same memories as the Electro from that movie. I mean, he looks completely different. He doesn't have that funky hair that he had. And this Electro is yellow, not blue. And it was nice to see Jamie Foxx back, and he had a lot of great snarky remarks. And this time I actually kind of liked his turn to villainy. It kind of made sense, because he comes into this world and he's like, you know, with all this power, because he's wearing an arc reactor on his chest, he's like, could do some real damage. So, really like that. And I also liked how Sandman appeared in the same scene to help him. And he teleports him away, and Sandman, because his morality kind of flip-flops, at least with the Sam Raimi version, he's like, did you just kill him? I'm gonna kill you. And then he teleports him to these little holding cells that are in the Sanctum Sanctorum. But yeah, those were some real nice fights. And what I can't believe too is Norman Osborn goes to Aunt May's homeless shelter, and he's like ranting about the universe and everything, because Tom Holland isn't his Peter Parker, so he has like a complete mind fuck. And it's kind of funny how Aunt May's like, he is not just out of his universe, but he is also out of his mind. But yeah, and then it leads to a real great scene where Peter goes up against Doctor Strange. Saw little snippets of it in the trailer, but I don't think they really showed all that much. So I guess here's a few images from the mirror dimension fight scene between Spider-Man and Doctor Strange. More proof he's not the mentor type figure, because he didn't really fight Fury or Iron Man in Homecoming and Far From Home. So yeah, after this, Peter gets this little box that if Strange activates it, it will frickin' kill all these villains, because the whole moral debate is Peter is beginning to realize, as Aunt May is putting it, that with great power comes great responsibility, and she ends up saying it. I'll admit, it felt weird at first, but after letting it marinate in some later events in this movie, I actually kind of liked it. And Ben Parker is still a part of this universe. It's just that he wasn't shown for logical reasons. We already saw his origin twice in 2 other Spider-Man iterations, so that's why I feel like Peter has 3 big losses. This Peter Parker, this Spider-Man, Tom Holland, Uncle Ben, Tony Stark, Iron Man, and another one that we're going to get into here real quick. So, got 2 at this moment, but soon to be 3. So, anyway, yeah, so after Strange is basically locked in the multiverse for quite a while, at least in the mirror dimension. Let's just say that that he decides to help them and takes them to the condominium. Sorry about the sudden change in sound. Let's just say something came up, so have to make that change. Anyway, let's just say that after this, many of the villains end up getting their deformities, whether mental or physical, treated or about to be treated, starting off with Doc Ock. But let's just say the Green Goblin gets a new costume and does what the Green Goblin always does: fuck up Spider-Man's life. So here's a brief look at that. So yeah, the Goblin takes over Norman for majority of the rest of the movie, and him and Peter get into a huge fight, and he gets all the other villains through some careful persuasion to join his side and take over this universe that Tom Holland's Spider-Man is in. And it leads to probably one of the darkest moments in any Spider-Man movie yet. After a long, brutal fight across the condominium, Green Goblin is about to choke Peter to death, but Aunt May stands her ground. And almost like the fight from the original Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie, he calls in his glider, and it doesn't pierce her like it did to him in Spider-Man 2002, but it stabs her good enough, I believe, on her stomach, where she bleeds slowly to death, and she then delivers, "With great power comes great responsibility," because Norman Osborn insulted her shelter and whatnot, or not Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin did. And frickin' anyway, she tells him that this isn't for nothing, and that with great power comes great responsibility, and she dies. Happy witnesses it and is arrested, and then it then leads to J. Jonah Jameson, who's in this movie in a beefed up role covering all the events of the movie. So that was a nice touch. But this real nice scene where Peter's just tearing up, looking at this billboard of him calling him out, and just really sets the mood, and he is just done for. And oh boy, it's rough. And it then leads to a scene with Ned and Michelle. And Ned earlier in the movie got the sling ring from Doctor Strange, and he uses it to call in Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man and Tobey Maguire that I already showed before. So I guess here's a few images from the intro scene of them. So yeah, after Garfield and Tobey interact with Michelle and Ned for a bit, Andrew climbs on the ceiling, and Tobey shows up, and they then clarify who they are, and guess Maguire, Spider-Man, gets called in, and guess he got to use his spider sense and saw that this one needed his help along with Garfield. And I'll say this right now, I've definitely gained more respect for Garfield now. I don't dislike him like I did before. He's not my favorite Spider-Man or Peter Parker, but I do have way more respect for him, so I'll admit his brief supporting role in this movie turned me around to him. And as for Maguire, this was a great supporting role appearance. He had some great moments to shine and some great lines of dialogue. And I don't agree with this one YouTuber I followed who said Garfield had the best lines. Nah. For the rest of this movie, it was a good balance. Holland had some good lines, Garfield had some good lines, and so did Maguire. They all worked off each other greatly. It was a balanced thing. And even in the final battle at the Statue of Liberty, it is Tom Holland who is leading the charge for the majority of it. And they looked up to him because he was an Avenger. But before we get to that, there is one thing I must cover. There is a real great scene on the rooftop where Peter likes to go to escape. And that's how he meets Maguire and Garfield. And they show to him that they get his loss, as they both lost their Uncle Ben, and for Garfield, Gwen Stacy also. And yeah, leads to a real great scene where they team up in Midtown High's science lab to create all the cures for everyone. And just so many great interactions of them, especially when Garfield says Maguire in his civilian clothes looked like a youth pastor. Oh, and I also like it too when Maguire just spins his web because he doesn't need web shooters, and Holland and Garfield are all intrigued, and even Holland asks him, can that come out of other places? Love that dirty joke. So I guess that's all I gotta say right there. One last thing, it also leads to a real great scene where Holland calls J. Jonah Jameson and he calls out the villains. And it is a real great scene where he says, I accept my power and responsibility. And he even shows that he could have killed them anytime he wanted, but he didn't. So I guess this leads into the third act climax at the Statue of Liberty, with the addition of Captain America's shield on it now. So yeah, before the fight begins, some of the interactions I hinted at happen between Maguire and Garfield as they're waiting for the Sinister Six, or in this case Sinister Five, to show up. And they're all coordinating their plans. They initially aren't working real well, and that's when Holland says, I'm an Avenger. And it leads to a real great thing where Maguire's all like, the Avengers, what's that? And Garfield is like, wait, you're in a band? Really like that line. But yeah, they eventually team up and cure everyone, and Doc Ock shows up. And in a great twist that it took me till the second viewing to see it, he acts like he's joining the Sinister Six. But he's actually there to help out because he had been cured before. He only acted and helped Holland cure the rest of the who weren't. And there's also a real nice interaction, a brief one, but a nice one nonetheless, of Maguire and Doc Ock interacting. And also the Green Goblin shows up to throw some pumpkin bombs. Guess he was making his new suit and whatnot. And it leads to this scene where Michelle is falling off the scaffoldings and Holland's trying to save her, but the Green Goblin hits him with his glider, but doesn't hurt him, he just hits him. And Garfield, because he felt haunted by how he couldn't save Gwen Stacy, and he even said he didn't pull his punches, and he kind of became a dark Spider-Man. Kind of like that too, that revelation. along with Tobey Maguire making it work with his Mary Jane. Didn't say anything about having kids or anything, but I imagine they at least are married. So, yeah, there is that. Garfield jumps down and he grabs Michelle, and he kind of has a look on his face like, whoa, I did it. He kind of like forgave himself, and Peter gets the upper hand on the Green Goblin and knocks him on the fallen Captain America shield, and he is just full of rage. He wants to kill him. He'd been debating it the whole time, and he almost gives into his rage. He literally grabs the glider and is about to impale him, similar to what Venom tried to do to Spider-Man in Spider-Man 3. And leads to a real great moment where Maguire shows up. He grabs the glider without even saying a word, kind of just looks at him, and Holland realizes, yeah, killing him isn't going to solve anything. And I guess maybe he also realized it isn't what Aunt May would have wanted. So he drops it, and Doctor Strange shows up in this fight, and the multiverse is beginning to tear apart because that box I mentioned earlier, he threw a pumpkin bomb in it, and it blew it up, so that's wreaking havoc. And it also leads to a real great moment where Doc Ock grabs at Osborn's glider along with Doctor Strange with a little whip, and yeah, this hole in the multiverse, I guess, showed Kraven the Hunter and Rhino, and Peter decides to tell Strange to cast a spell to make it that everyone forgets Peter Parker is Spider-Man. He realizes that a price is going to have to be paid, and does the most Spider-Man-like thing yet. All the villains get to go back to their own universe, now cured. And Peter now is in a world where no one knows he's Spider-Man. So all the events of prior movies still happened, but everything going forward is going to be different now. Happy doesn't know who he is. Same thing with Zendaya, or not Zendaya, Michelle, Ned. And yeah, he has no help now. Not the Avengers, not connected to Stark, no fancy tech. Almost like a soft reboot, bringing him back to basics. And he tries to go talk to Michelle and Ned, but then he realizes how happy they are, and I think he either decided not to, or he's gonna do it at another time. So we'll see. Because a sequel to this movie is already confirmed by Kevin Feige and is in active development. So I guess the last thing to say is now Peter lives in a crummy apartment with two mementos from his past. The little Emperor Palpatine from Spider-Man Homecoming, and oh, Michelle is wearing the Black Dahlia necklace from Far From Home. But yeah, it's quite sad, but fitting of Spider-Man, because that is what happens in a good majority of Spider-Man stories, and it was kind of fitting that this last movie would have a bittersweet ending. So we see him go to an apartment similar to Peter Parker's from the Maguire era that's run down, and he ends up knitting his own costume, has a police scanner similar to Maguire, and goes to swing, and it is like almost ripped straight from the 60s comics. So here it is. But yeah, and then it leads to a final swing, similar to how The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 1 and 2 ended. Oh, and Far From Home did have a bit of the swinging around the city type ending also. But yeah, so going forward, things will be different. And this Peter Parker has been through a lot, and a lot of tragedy. Losing Uncle Ben, Tony Stark, Iron Man, and now Aunt May. And a fourth consequence after this film is, after the events of this movie, all the prior experiences did still happen. They're still canon. It's just going forward. He's not going to have Ned. He's not going to have Michelle. He's not going to have Doctor Strange or any of the Avengers remember him or know who he is. And Happy doesn't. So he's just going to have to reforge his own identity or make his own and be the street level Spider-Man. And hopefully could one day lead to a team up with Daredevil and many of the Netflix street level heroes, which would be awesome. So, yeah. I guess to sum up the mid-credit scene, it shows Venom, played by Tom Hardy, at a bar. He finds out about the Avengers and Thanos and Peter Parker. He wants to meet him, but after the end of this movie, he gets teleported back to the Sony Spider-Man universe, and a tiny little symbiote droplet is on there, which I think will start the symbiote saga off. Some are saying this means Tom Hardy won't be Venom in the MCU, but I feel like he still could be. I think the door is still open. So, we shall see. But I really like what that teases for what's coming up next for Tom Holland's Spider-Man. And the one after that is a trailer for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. All I will say is it looks like Wanda Maximoff, Scarlet Witch, has been doing research on the multiverse. And Strange is going to her for help, because he doesn't know much about it. And can't wait to see that. Looks like Baron Mordo's going to be a villain in the movie. Also, this villain who has like an eye and tentacles from Doctor Strange comics is also going to be one. Oh, and we're going to get a live action dark Doctor Strange. Very similar to that episode of What If that I really love. So yeah, I'll say this movie, there's something for all Spider-Man fans in it. Whether you like Maguire, Garfield, Holland, it's almost like the perfect gift-wrapped Spider-Man movie. It was everything I feel like many of us wanted and more. It had surprises, it had what we wanted and expected, and though it is the end of the Home trilogy, I feel it is also a new beginning. It's a new beginning for Holland, since he's going to get another trilogy. And I'm going to say this right now, after this movie, how is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1 and 2 going to top this? Like, seriously. This movie, what it did with the multiverse was just incredible. Those writers, they better have something really good cooking up. But yeah, I like what it teases. We could get some more traditional Spider-Man stories and villains in these movies, and maybe even a traditional Mary Jane, Gwen Stacy, Harry Osborn, maybe another Norman Osborn. So the possibilities now are almost endless. So yeah, this is definitely probably my favorite Spider-Man movie, my favorite MCU movie of the year, and may just be up there among my favorite movies of this year also. So yeah, highly recommend this movie, and it's almost like the perfect Spider-Man gift for Christmas, to be quite honest. What more could we want? It's quite wonderful. What John Watts, Kevin Feige, and everyone here accomplished, is just wonderful. This movie had all the ingredients to be a failure, to be a repeat of Spider-Man 3 and The Amazing Spider-Man 2, to have too much stuff going on and too many villains. But somehow, some way, they pulled it off. I guess similar to Into the Spider-Verse. I guess this is proof you can have more than 2 villains. You just have to have a good script that knows how to balance screen time. So, I guess the formula is out there. So yeah, to be quite honest, I think I give this movie a perfect rating. 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10. Just absolutely wonderful. Go see this movie. Thank you for watching. And like, comment, subscribe. Peace.